Alright guys, welcome to another A-scale modeling video, and today we are going over my progression of model building. Now this is something that has been asked somewhat, and so I figured I'd go over it. So this is from starting in 2012 to 2022. So I figured I would start out with the history of how I got into it. And it's a pretty happen chance type thing. So one day, I want to say I was in 5th grade, so 2012-ish, maybe even in it was late 2012, and I remember in the mail, I got this video, and it was called Weapons of War Aircraft Carriers. And I always had a fascination with military aircraft and naval ships and helicopters. So right away, I decided to watch this, and I still don't know who it came from or why it was sent to me. But I'm glad it was, and I watched this thing hundreds and hundreds of times, and it went through the history of U.S. Naval aviation. And so right away, of course, I wanted to build an aircraft carrier, and I did. And the first kit was the USS Yorktown 545 scale or something like that. And just wanted to build a Yorktown class. They made it a big point on how pivotal the Yorktown class was in that film. So without further delay, that was a little bit of the history. So without further delay, let's get right into some of the models. Alright, and this is the first model aircraft I built. This is Airfix's 72nd scale Typhoon. I built this in 2013, and for first model, it's really rough. As you can tell, the paint job is not good. The camo, I only painted the green, I didn't paint the gray, and the decals are only tacked on with water. However, I did paint up the gun bays, and one thing I really liked to do early on was add little details like that to my models. Next kit that I bought, this is again an Airfix kit. They are super cheap, and I could get them pretty locally at a Barnes & Noble. But I wanted to really weather and change it up, and as you can see, the little metal streaks, they don't look great. The scratches aren't great. The decals is the first time I tried using microsaw and microset, and as you can see, it's not too bad. I also painted the camo both tones because the gray wouldn't work, and I tried cutting out the pilot seat. So it's not all bad. It's definitely an improvement from the first model kit. Also, no attention to seam lines. Now, this Focke-Wulf, I believe, was built in the same year, too. And if you can tell, the decals went on really nicely. Not the swastikas, those were a later addition. But this is the first time I really felt like I honed in decals. The paint job still isn't great, and the seam lines are still there. And this is the next model, and what I'm trying to show you is improvements. Once again, two-tone camo, used microsaw and microset. But the big difference in this one was I used a wash for the first time. As you can see on the gray, it puts out the detail a little bit. It was just black paint and water, but it was the first time using a wash. And this was the first time I ever painted D-Day stripes. I want to say this is 2014, maybe 2015 when I got this. Still no airbrush, but camo's still looking rough. I'm sorry that it's dusty. All these are dusty. But the D-Day stripes, this was not great. This whole kit was kind of weird. I had to individually put the blades in, and that kind of threw me off. And as a whole, the paint suffered, but it doesn't look too bad, especially on the bottom for brush painting. I don't remember when this size was built either. There is a video of it on YouTube. But what I was doing around at the time, I was watching the big modelers of the time, like Flory Models, Genesis Models, and like Alex Modeling, and some other ones at the time. And what they all did, what I noticed, was they weren't brush painters for the most part, and they had nice smooth paints. So what I realized I could do was, while I didn't have an airbrush, I could use rattle cans. And rattle cans helped a lot and progress the paint work, in my opinion. While it's not as controlled and as fine as an airbrush, it does look nice, I think, and you can get a nice even. Now, for my birthday in 2015, I want to say, I got this Revell kit and I got an airbrush. And this was the first one I ever airbrushed. Unfortunately, it didn't stand the test of time as the glue was not very good. that I used. But as you can see, I really masked off, I took my time, and I even masked off the canopy, which I am very happy with, to say the least, or even still today. Unfortunately, though, this kit was a bit rushed at the end, and I brush painted on the white on the underside, and unfortunately it did not turn out great, and in fact it actually turned out quite bad, so that was something I'm not too happy with. Naturally, the next progression for me was to make a bit more of a challenging camo. And the German aircraft, for the most part, are squares, and I'll, just tape it off and you'll be good. So I wanted to try it out on this Flying Tigers model, and I think it turned out nice for the time. As you can tell, it wasn't thinned by all the little pebbling on the end, but for a freehand camo that's a bit more wavy in different and odd shapes, I think it turned out nice for the first time. Also around this time, one thing that always plagued and why I never did P51s for the P51s for the most part was I could never get a nice silver coat. And now with an airbrush, I finally did on this Mosquito. I was finally able to get a nice flat, even silver coat, and I think it turned out very nice. Still no filling, however. One thing I always liked to do was challenge myself, so the next thing was even more challenging camo. So this is another Airfix 0, and very nice kit, no filling however, but one thing I did do, which again to challenge myself, was I tried to scratch up the decals and make them more worn torn, and I think the effect worked very nice. It's a little bit though too straight for my liking, but it's not too bad. The next thing I really wanted to try in my model progression was weathering better. And so right here we have a Kate, and I just really wanted to beat the hell out of it. And while I do think it's a little bit overkill and doesn't look as good in some places, I think towards the back half of the fuselage to the tail it looks really good in my opinion. And I just wanted to get better at weathering, so what better way than to practice it on the real model. However, I did learn you can go overboard, and I think I went overboard on this one, this Accurate Miniatures kit. While it's not, I think, overboard for the type of model, I do think for the paint job, which was nice under it, was. Another thing that I practiced with this kit was the weathering of the bomb bay, and I think it turned out really nice. This Academy F4F was one of the first kits I truly wanted to modify. I like modifying kits. Sometimes it doesn't turn out great. It's in my head a little bit better. But I folded up the wings. This took a lot of cutting and a lot of scribing, but I did it, and overall I'm very happy with the results. I even tried some weathering on it. I do think it's a little overkill, but I think it looks nice nonetheless. While this BF-109 doesn't look like much, this was a huge step, and this is the first time that I used filler. I've had filler, but it was all that cruddy Tamiya stuff. So this is the first time I tried, I want to say Bondo or something, and it didn't fill the greatest. However, for a first time using filler, it was nice and a huge step in the right direction. And this was my first revisit into the 1/72nd scale subject with the quick builds group build at the time. For Spitfires, and this is the first time that I did D-Day markings since that Academy kit, and I think it turned out really nice. I did a wash. I really took my time with the decals, and as you can see, they really sunk in and were nice, and this just turned out to be a great kit, and I think I did well. Some of the filling I did, but I didn't really get rid of seam lines. This Edaurd Phantom was a really big turning point for my model building. This was the first time I ever did black basing, and this is the first time I really tried filling. The black basing turned out nice, especially when I just modeled on the camouflage, and I really mixed paints, and I really tried my hardest to just do the best that I could on this model. As you can see on the bottom here, I decaled all the bombs, all the missiles, Did every single stencil I could, and I just think it turned out fantastic. I don't know what happened to the fins, as you will see a lot of these are missing parts. And as you can see, we are up to present day, and each model that you build, you will gain experience one way or another. This this F4F Wildcat from Tamiya is just a culmination of all the builds I've done previously into what I know today. I black based this one, I filled, I sanded, I did everything that, including decals, and I've done everything in the past. I've done everything that I did in the past, but better today. And it's just something you only learn through experience. So thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and peace.